Good morning, guys. Today I'm going to be kind of working on the Runabout from Deep Space Nine. A wonderful kit. I love Deep Space Nine and I love the Runabout, so I'm very excited to work on this. Now, what a lot of people talk about on this model is that it doesn't have an interior. That you've got all of this wonderful open space. Um, you've got big windows to see into where a cockpit would be. You've got big windows into the back. But there's no interior. So I'm going to show you how we can kind of put in some detail in there pretty easily, pretty inexpensively. I don't really fault the kit for not having an interior. The studio model just had black windows. So if you don't want to do anything on the inside, just take those clear parts, spray them glossy black. Yours will look just like the studio model. So not that necessary to do it. But I have fun building, and I think building interior for the Runabout will be fun. So I'm going to do it not necessarily because it needs it, but because it's fun to build one. So, and one thing I want to show you is if you just want a little bit of detail in that cockpit, real inexpensive option for you is Squadron Products True Details. They make all sorts of 1/72 seats. The ones I picked were Soviet ejection seats, just because they fit real well in a cockpit. They make all these for the aircraft builders. So what I've done is I took those Soviet aircraft seats and I sanded them off. I sanded off all of the seat belts and ejection gear, kind of smoothed them out a bit. And then I kind of used a little file just to kind of get those little grooves to kind of make a few of the little cushion details in that model. So that was about $5, $5.99, and it gives me a couple really great seats that I can just put in that cockpit. So if you just want something to provide a little bit of detail in your model, you can pick those up, just put them behind those little windshields, and you'll be fine. What I want to do is I want to kind of build up a lot of that cockpit. So we're going to be kind of laying down a floor in the front and a floor in the back to make that lounge. Those are just styrene pieces cut out. And those are available in almost every hobby shop. Very inexpensive. What I'm going to be using today is I've got evergreen styrene sheet. And it ran me about $4, and it came with 3 sheets, a real thin one, kind of a medium, and a thick one. I'm also going to be using some half round strips and a couple thicker strips here, and then 1mm by 1mm strips as well. Those strips run about $3 a pack, so I'm up about $4 for the sheets, about $9 for all the strips, maybe another $6 for the ejection seats. I'm under $20, and I'm not even going to come close to using all of these supplies. I'm going to have tons of those left over for other things. So I wanted to start off kind of in the back of the ship. So in that Next Generation episode, where you can kind of see it, there's a back wall with a doorway. So I'm starting off just kind of with that back wall, just cut out styrene strip, and I'm going to make a door to go behind it. And I like to use layers of styrene because it provides depth, it provides detail. You can kind of see that you're not just looking at a flat sheet. Now, watching that film, the doorway actually has kind of these cross beams going across it. So I'm just going to take my 1mm by 1mm strips, and I'm going to start building those on the doorway. Now they're going to be a little bit long now, and I'm going to trim them before we get them in. That's going to be my center beam. Now these other ones go on an angle, so I'm going to start trimming my styrene just about at a 45-degree angle. All right. And now just going to start positioning those in kind of that little star shape that they are on that back wall, on that back half. All right, now we've got those positioned. The glue I like the most is Tamiya Extra Thin. Looks like that bottle's running a little low. And this is a great one. You just kind of touch it to it. It gets sucked underneath the plastic and glues down very securely. So I'm going to start by that middle one. And I still have to trim it to fit my doorway. So I'm only gluing the middle right now. Now I'm going to position those star elements so they're as even as I can get them. And just put a little drop of glue underneath each one. This will actually melt the plastic. Just touch them together there. And it'll look like it was all one piece. Now, while the glue is still a little wet, I'm going to trim it along my outline. And because I just glued the middle, these end pieces are going to come off nice and easily. Okay, so that's kind of the hatch. It's going to fit in my doorway. It's going to fit right behind it like that. And then, as you watch the TNG episode, that back wall looks like it may have other blast doors that come across and a lot of layers here. So I've already started by cutting out another layer to go in front of it. And just like I did before, I used that 1mm strip to kind of add those cross beams and those diagonal beams that are going to go across it. I'm going to sandwich all these together. So I'm going to we're going to start off with the doorway, or the door. It's going to go behind the doorway. And then the cross beams are going to go in front. And that's going to be kind of our stacked up back wall. And you can see that's just sheets of styrene, strips of styrene, but it looks like it has a great amount of detail because of the kind of the way we've layered it upon it. So that's our back wall. Okay, so now we've glued our door behind our back wall. We've added this front part, which has kind of those blast door details and the cross beams. So we've got kind of our back wall. So that's going to be what you see if you stare all the way in. Now, in the Next Generation episode, this was a separate section right here with another wall in front of it. And there were sleeping compartments in here. We're not going to be able to see any of those through the windows, but this extra wall is a detail you should have. And I built it exactly the same way. I cut a piece of strip styrene in this shape. Then I used that 1mm by 1mm strip to kind of add these cross-hatching details here. Then I took some rectangular parts just to give it a brace to hold it upright. And that's going to fit in right there. So that's going to provide almost all of the detail that you see when you look towards the back of the runabout. Of course, what we saw in that Next Generation episode is this main section was a little bit like a conference room. There was a conference table, and that's probably the easiest thing to scratch build, is rectangular styrene, a couple legs sticking down on the bottom. And then there were 4 chairs for, I believe, Picard and Troy and Data. It might have been Ensign Rowe in that episode, maybe. But there were 4 little conference room chairs. These conference room chairs were probably the hardest thing to scratch build. I'm sure there's probably some site out there that has 1/72 office chairs. I couldn't find it. So I decided I would have to try and kind of scratch build them myself. And that's what we're going to look at doing next. To build these chairs, I used my strip styrene and my half-round styrene. And that's really all I used. I don't want to spend too much and get too elaborate. Um, I measured out my own office chair and kind of used that 1/72 scale to figure out how tall they should be. Now, these old brass calipers. And I'm just going to, when you scratch build, just think about the shapes that you're doing. A chair is really just a chair back, a chair seat, legs and arms. So this long piece, that's going to be my chair back. And honestly, I might have gone a little small there. Yep. Okay, a little bit longer of a back. That's all right. We're going to make that the chair bottom. So we've got our chair back, our chair bottom. And I'm just going to change that up from being just a square. You can make it just a little bit of an angled seat here. All right. So now we've got to make this look a bit more like an actual chair back. So I'm going to clip it up here, make it a little round. And I'm going to use my files to just kind of round this out. I find this nerve-wracking. It's like shaving your sideburns. It's hard to get them symmetrical, and I end up curving one more than the other and then having to go back to the other side. But you just want to kind of round it out. And then, just add a little bit of detail, we're going to separate that rest a little bit. So I'm going to come in with another jeweler's file and just start filing it in from the outside. Provide a little separation there. Now we're getting something that looks a little bit more like a chair back. And then what I want to do next is just add some scribed marks here. Without going through the styrene, just to kind of denote some upholstery lines where the upholstery is sold or sewn together. I'll go in with another file and actually make those a little deeper. But we're starting to get a chair back. Now what I want to do next is those chair backs and headrests are actually a little bit raised in the episode. So I'm going to take a little bit of this half round. We're going to glue it to the top of that headrest. Tiny bit of glue. Glued on that half round to it. We're going to let that dry for just a minute. While we're doing that, down here for the base, we can start working on that a little bit. We're just going to need a little bit more of our round. File it a little bit so that we've got a nice square surface. Same thing here, kind of make this symmetrical and curved and rounded. All right, so we've let the glue dry on the headrest we're building. We're going to trim that and kind of make it match the styrene piece. And we've also glued kind of the chair legs to the bottom of the seat here. Just going to use our X-Acto knife to kind of trim off the excess part of that half round rod. Then we're going to go back to our jeweler's files, and we're going to file that round and make it match the shape that we had below. It's also a little thick, so we're going to file it down so it's a little flatter. Okay. All right. Okay, so now we're kind of really making progress on that chair back. We've got a headrest up there. We've got some lines scribed in kind of for the upholstery. That's going to be a chair back, and that's pretty small. We'll clean up kind of all those filing marks you see there, but also with a little coat of paint, that'll look a lot better too. Next, we're going to be gluing it to the bottom of the chair. Now, we don't want it right at a 90-degree angle. That'd be a pretty uncomfortable chair. So we're going to tilt it a little bit, and I'm going to use my file to just angle that edge instead of having it a straight edge. Almost did the wrong direction there. Once I have it kind of angled and beveled, see if I can get in shot here, then we'll be able to kind of glue it at a nice angle there. I'm just going to use that Tamiya extra thin to get that surface glued. A little bit right on the bottom. And get those glued together. Okay. You can see we've got the start of a good chair. A little bit of extra filings there. And here's one I've kind of completed. So you can see, actually I like the upholstery lines I did on that one a little bit better. The next thing I did is I just took quarter round rod that we used for the base, and I cut it down the middle to make kind of quarter round. And that's what I glued to the sides for the arms. And there we go. Hope that wasn't a terrible video watching somebody make a tiny chair out of styrene. Do that 4 or 5 times, and now you'll have kind of some chairs for your runabout conference room. All right, and that's what we're going to do to flesh out the back of the runabout. All right, now that we've got the back of the runabout sorted, we're going to look at the front. And as I mentioned, I've got kind of these chairs originally made for an aircraft made by True Details. I've kind of laid them behind a computer console here. Now, in early seasons, there was a transporter pad right behind them. I thought that'd be a little hard to kind of see. And in later seasons, they have a computer console. Kind of a standing station that you'd have behind. So I kind of worked that out for my next piece. Then a real simple archway. As you kind of look down the ship, there's a lot of archways and things to kind of walk through. And then in the back, I decided to have the door to the rest of the runabout closed. And I built this up just like I did the one in the back. Kind of a back wall piece of styrene, a doorway behind it with those cross beams, and a layered piece in front kind of for those blast doors to kind of close up on it. Which I think is kind of fun. On the runabout, it's also supposed to be interchangeable. So I think those extra blast doors close the front off from the middle, from the back, and they can take entire sections of the runabout off. So I think that's why you have kind of your hatchway door and then these blast doors that come in from the sides. So we're going to get all that glued in place, and then we'll kind of start painting it. And then I just wanted to show this computer console. Once again, you know, when you start scratch building, just look at the basic shapes you're trying to go for. I had this kind of center section here, kind of an L shape for the computer panels. It was real easy, just 2 pieces of styrene glued together at an angle. Next we had these circular sections, so I just took a strip of styrene, used my file to curve it down into a circle, and I cut it in half down the middle, then glued it to each side. Down here, once again, I was being fairly cheap, so I just kind of sandwiched a couple 1mm strips together. I think I put 4 of them together to make that middle section, and then I stuck my half round sheets to either side of it to make kind of the oval circle, and made that kind of the base, glued it all together. and then just triangles down at the bottom to kind of hold it to the floor. And then this front part, I just took my thinnest piece of styrene, wrapped it around and glued it. Then I just used a file and an X-Acto to kind of cut it off. And there's a neat little computer station for us, which is going to go right behind it. So now that we've got chairs, computer consoles, doorways, archways, a conference room table, and chairs, it'll be time to paint it and see how it looks. All right, here we are. We have put down the paint colors. I kind of blue floor, gray walls. I kind of wet sanded these beams to kind of get them to show up a little bit more. We won't be able to see too much, so it's fine to have a lot of contrast because you won't be able to see much. That contrast will help kind of show what you've got going on in the runabout. So now we're just going to kind of set it up and take a look at how it looks through those windows. Put a temporary light in to kind of illuminate that interior to give you an idea of how much you can actually see when you kind of look in the back. So you can see the table, you can see that hatchway. And I'm pretty happy with that. If I go up to the model and kind of look in, I'm glad that I'll be able to see something inside of it. Now let's see if we can take a look at the front. Alright, so here's the front. You definitely see those cockpit seats. I haven't glued those down yet because I really want to get those positioned right so they sit well in the window. Here it is without those cockpit seats. So once again, we can kind of see through to the hatch in the back. We can see that computer console. We can see some of the structure. All right, once again, I'm pretty happy with that. Kind of changes it from kind of being a hollow model to kind of being able to see kind of the set inside. So once again, if you're wondering about the runabout, wondering if you can put an interior in it, yes, you absolutely can. You can scratch build an interior. It's nothing to be worried about. It's really something, grab some styrene, grab an X-Acto, have fun with it. I'd like to thank everybody once again for watching and remind you there's a great forum out there, allscaletrek.com. We've got all sorts of builds, every scale as the name implies. We've got big 1/350th scale ships, lots of 1/2500th scale ships, a really great community for anybody out there who's interested in Star Trek models. So we'll see you around.